Hello Summoners and welcome back to another ProGuides video. My name is Nathaning and today we'll be talking about our predictions for the 15 most broken champions on patch 11.15. One of the most important things in a constantly evolving game like League of Legends is to be able to adapt with the meta, and that's why we're here for you. If you want to know what's going to be OP before the patch hits, you should be ready to hit the ground running without having to test to see if one buff or nerf really made that much of a difference. And if you don't know how to play any of these OP picks, or you're just a little bit rusty, this will give you a few days to brush up on them in some normals or on a smurf. So before we get started, I just want to say that this list is not in any particular order. It's just a list of the champions that we think are going to be some of the strongest, most influential picks on this patch. We'll be starting off with Camille. She's a pretty familiar face in our meta series, being an S tier pick for a few patches in a row now. And she's not only just a returning pick, a lot of the most OP champions in each role don't even make the nerf list this patch. And pretty much all of them have held their spot at the top for weeks or even months now. Anyway, Camille just makes it again because she's just so good at just about every aspect of the game. When played perfectly, she has a nearly unbeatable laning phase. She can both split push and team fight, and she does a ton of damage to all targets, squishy or tanky. That's thanks to her Q's and powered auto attacks. To top things off, she's also a great abuser of Divine Sunderer, which is arguably the strongest mythic in the game at the very moment. So with everything going on for her, there's no real downsides. Camille just seems to be here to stay. Another top laner returning to this list is Fiora. When we decided between the two top lane titans, there was one deciding factor that you need to consider. Do you value Camille's versatility, which allows her to play multiple playstyles, including grouping up with teammates, or would you rather just completely solo carry, split pushing your way to victory on your own all game? If you like the sound of the latter, then Fiora is a champion for you. Her laning phase is definitely not as consistent as Camille, and she does have some strong counters, but if you can survive the laning phase without being too behind, then you'll be able to hard 1v9 most games. Up next, we have Kennen, specifically in the mid lane. I have no idea why Kennen is getting buffed on this patch. In Plat Plus, he's doing okay in his main role as a top laner. And don't get me wrong, he's just barely sitting about the 50% win rate, but there are other champions doing a lot worse in the role that could really use some help. And then, when you look at mid, he's killing it, having over a 54% win rate. So even if top lane Kennen did really need some help, all Riot is really doing is making him even stronger in this lane instead. His ultimate makes him a great counter to just about every single pick in the mid lane meta. Think about it, the role is filled with assassins. If they go in on you, you can either outdamage them with your full combo, or if it's a fight that you can't win, then you can just stun them and then zip away with your E. Then out of the laning phase, Kennen has amazing team fighting, with his ultimate and W giving insane damage and CC, setting up your team for an easy ace. I mean, if you're fed enough, you may even be able to one-shot a champion or two on your own. Whether you're trying to learn how to abuse these broken champions or how to deal with them when you end up on the wrong side of the matchup, if you really wanted to speed up the process, you could go ahead and check out ProGuides.com. We have courses from all of your favorite streamers and pros, like CoreJJ, Afremu, and Xmithy. They can really help you understand how to play your role, and if you want to get more personalized one-on-one experience, our top-tier coaches are available 24/7 to help you anytime that you want it. Whichever option you choose, stop spinning your wheels on your own and get on the fast track to higher elo today. Now let's get back on topic, shall we? Despite being on the nerf list, Viego is still a champion with an insane amount of carry potential. He'll definitely be pushed more towards strictly being a jungler, but no matter what lane Viego is in, his passive makes him a 1v9 machine. In the jungle, he doesn't have the super OP ganks that a lot of other meta picks have, but Viego makes up for it with his ridiculously strong skirmishing. Possessing just a single fallen enemy is usually enough to set off the domino effect. When Viego gets a triple kill over at the bottom scuttle crab because the other jungler just can't keep up, the game is all but over. Just remember that the stats will never show how broken Viego really is. His win rate will likely be around 51%, but that's because the champion is gated by how well the player knows how to use every other champion with his passive. When a noob ends up first timing Irelia with Viego's passive, you can tell that they have no idea what they're doing. But when you have somebody that can actually use each champion proficiently, he can do some pretty wild things. Now for the champion on the buff list for next patch, we have Blitzcrank. I mean, he's honestly already a good pick in solo queue since a single hook can decide the game if you make a pick on the right target at the right time. But it could also decide the game if you pick up a tank that could kill your entire team. But anyway, of the two buffs he's getting this patch, the damage buff is definitely more of the notable change. Blitzcrank's entire identity is based on landing a hook and securing a kill. You're sort of banking everything on the ability to land it. And when you do, you generally expect to see a flash out of the target, or if that's down, maybe a kill. The added damage means that you should expect kills to happen more consistently when Blitzcrank hook does connect, which I think is a good thing. He's grabbing our attention for this patch. Shinzo returns yet again as an S-tier pick in the jungle. With both strong ganking and dueling, he's just way too good in the current early game focused meta. and his kit is incredibly easy to use, so players all elos can use him to dominate. Shinzo was already rising in popularity since the jungle changes back on 11.7, but he always had the same problem. As the game went on, he kind of sort of fell off. His dueling was always good, but in teamfights he just wasn't as great as some other picks. With the relatively new build having Gore Drinker as a standard mythic of choice, Shinzo is a lot stronger now in teamfights. So he scales a lot better than he did on a more duel-centric Eclipse build. But also, if you want to try something a little bit spicier, try building crit on him. It's actually extremely fun. Lee Sin will also continue to be a dominant pick, although he's more of a pick suited for upper elos due to the mechanics needed to really get the most out of him. A high skill floor also means generally a high skill ceiling, and with Lee Sin, that's definitely the case. This means that he's pretty hard to pick up, but once you master him, you can easily make some insane plays consistently in every game and break in the LP. A common misconception is that Lee Sin falls off hard as the game goes on, but that's not totally the case. While he may not be bursting down targets from full HP in every fight at the late game, a good player knows how to swap their playstyle depending on the game. In some fights, you have to look for an insect on the enemy ADC, while in others, you may be tasked with peeling for your own backline. This ties back into him being a much better pick in the upper elos, where players are better at identifying their roles in a teamfight. Our next pick is Lulu, who is arguably the best champion in the game across all roles. She is simply too versatile of a pick. Pair her with a crazy hyper carry, and she does a good job of peeling them while buffing up their DPS. Pair her with a diver, and she helps to enable a lot of them with her movement speed buff and her ultimate giving them crazy sticky power. Aside from her synergy with the team, she's also an incredibly frustrating champion to deal with for the enemy team. Her ultimate can interrupt a lot of engages, and no matter how fed an assassin or melee carry is, if they don't have a QSS, they are completely nullified by her polymorph, which is point and click. At this point, I've given up on seeing Lulu nerfs. Even before the season, I feel like she's always been a top tier support. I mean, even when enchanters aren't the best as a class, she was still the best of that class, and could be at least considered a strong A tier pick. I think Lulu needs a mini rework or something to put her in a healthier state. People who abuse this champion for free elo is kind of disgusting. I'm looking at you, Brooke. Anyway, that brings us to today's question of the day. What champion do you think could use our mini rework? Mini rework does not mean full VGU, like what Muno just got. I just want to know what champion you think could use a small scale adjustment for a healthier gameplay. Let us know your answers in the comments down below. Now, without further ado, let's get back into the video. While her name may not show up in the patch notes, Morgana is definitely getting some indirect buffs this patch. First, Blitzcrank and Rail are seeing some buffs on this patch, and with buffs, usually we see an increase in play rate. And Morgana is a perfect counter to both of them, able to fully shut down Blitzcrank's hooks and Rel's engages attempts with her Black Shield and Binding. But it's not just who she counters that makes Morgana good. The iconic bot lane duo for Morgana has always been Caitlyn. While the buff that Caitlyn is getting isn't anything too crazy, it will definitely make her a more solid option for ADCs. So with her bot lane partner being buffed and champions that she hard counters likely becoming more popular, we should definitely expect Morgana to be a top tier pick. Zyra also makes this list partially due to how well she synergizes with and counters the champions in the current meta. Like Morgana, she goes super well with Caitlyn, with the pair putting out a lot of poke damage. In fact, Zyra is so lane dominant that she actually is a good pick into Lulu. That's right, there's at least one champion that you can consider a counter to the best support in the game. But just being strong early wouldn't be enough to make it to this list. Zyra just doesn't have a fall off point. In fact, it's not too uncommon to see a Zyra topping the damage charts in the long games, and the damage just doesn't come from poking. Zyra's full combo does a ridiculous amount of damage in teamfights, on top of providing a lot of disruption. Wukong may be on the list of champions being nerfed for this patch, but don't let that fool you. He's not going anywhere. An HP regen nerf only really affects a champion that has to play more defensively in lane. Most of Wukong's sustain actually happens in combat, with the HP regen from his passive giving him a lot of health back in extended trades. Since you should constantly be looking for those extended trades, this nerf really only affects players that are using them in the wrong ways and affects players who are going against counter matchups. It'll basically have no effect on his ability to go for all-ins all game long, especially if he's running Ignite. And let's not forget how ridiculously OP his teamfighting is thanks to him having 2 dashes and one of the stronger teamfight ultimates. But hey, you know, minus 1.5 health per 5 seconds. Khazix is another champion that we see maintaining a spot at the top. He may not have quite as much dueling and ganking power as Shinzo in the early game, but what he lacks there, he more than makes up for with his insane snowballing potential. I'm sure we've seen it all once or twice or a couple of hundred of times. Khazix is basically invisible for the first few minutes of the game, and I guess in teamfights as well, having no kill participation by the time the second set of buffs are respawning. But suddenly, he picks up a kill with a top lane gank, then 2 kills in a dragon fight, and that's all he needs to take over the game. Next thing you know, he's able to walk into other team's jungle and get kill after kill on the enemy jungler. Then he's one-shotting anybody that moves up to farm a side lane on their own or diving into teamfights to delete carries, but no one can really punish him due to the constant stealths from his ultimate and Duskblade resets. And as we all know, this champion really bugs me. Anyway, I'm sorry for that. Don't worry mid laners, we're getting close to the end of the video, but I didn't forget about Katarina. Despite consistently being one of the most picked and banned mid laners for the past several patches, and maintaining a pretty high win rate that entire time, she's still being completely untouched like me throughout all of quarantine. I'm just kidding, it's happened even before quarantine. I guess that Riot hasn't realized that her losing 5 movement speed didn't actually solve any issues, cause she could just dash forever. Anyway, she'll continue to be one of the best assassins for carrying games, with the forgiving ability to easily get back into the game with just a single good fight around an objective. Out of all the marksmen, Tristana is, in our opinion, the most broken. Vayne and Jinx may have a lot of hyper-carrying potential, but what makes Tristana so good is her complete self-sufficiency. Being super mobile with the resetting jump and having self-peel with her ultimate just makes her a super safe pick for those times that you don't really trust your team to help. This is especially useful and true in lower elos, where you're probably right not to have a lot of faith. But if just being safe was enough, Ezreal would have had this spot. What makes Tristana special is that she also does a ton of burst damage, and that, combined with the resetting jumps, means that she can be playing very aggressively as well. And once you get a small lead with her, you can just jump in constantly. Against immobile laners that don't respect you, this usually means that you can snowball really hard and take over the game. Just make sure that you respect them, or they'll probably kill you. Finishing off our list, we have Zilean. He's another one of our product of the meta picks, so to speak. The current meta is very heavily ridden with high damage carries, usually in the form of diving bruisers and assassins. Just go back and look at this list. Aside from the supports, just about every champion is a fast-paced diver. And Zilean works really well at both enabling them on his team or shutting them down when they are on the opposing side. Whether you've played as, with, or against him, you've definitely seen how impactful his E alone is. The massive movement speed buff helps divers get onto his targets quicker. ADCs can kite away from danger, or when used on an opponent, slows them so much that they may as well be stunned. To make matters better, or I guess worse depending on which team you're on, his ultimate can be thrown onto a diving ally to prevent them from being bursted down after their initial engage, or can be used to stop a squishy ally from being killed by an enemy diver. This is especially useful for champions that reset, like an enemy Katarina not getting an extra shampoo, or Khazix not getting a Duskblade proc and a second lead that may completely save a fight for his team. And that about wraps things up for our predictions for the 15 most broken champions on patch 11.15. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure to sub so you never miss out on any of our content such as this. Remember to let us know what champion you'd like to see get a mini rework down in the comments below. And one last thing, don't forget to check out our Discord in the description box below, where you can discuss League further or just hang out and be a part of our community. I can't wait to see you guys back in the next video, but until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day. Peace.